Hi everyone, welcome to another video. In this video I am going to show you guys how to make an augmented reality based video player. I am going to use three very short videos that I already have with me. So without further ado, let's start guys. I have already uploaded this app to Play Store so you guys can check. Link is in the description. Please install and test the app. So let's start by creating a new project, and I am going to call it AR Video Player, and let's create the project. Wait for Unity to load the project in the editor. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to change the platform we are working on right now. So to do that, we go to File and we go to Build Settings, and here we select Android and we click Switch Platform. So it will load all the settings according to Android platform. Now let's go to the assets and include a few assets that are required to build the app. For example, the play button, the pause button, the sound button and the mute button. I have them already in my desktop, so I am going to do import new asset. Click import. It will automatically import everything, and select all of them, and from here go to the texture type and change it to sprite, 2D and UI, and click apply. So now let's come back over here, and now let's add Vuforia in our Unity project. To do that, we need to delete this main camera. Now we need to add the Vuforia AR camera. We can do that by going to Vuforia menu and AR camera. As soon as we click this, it will ask us that it needs some files that it want to be imported in our project. So let's click import. So now Vuforia has already been imported in our scene, and now what we need to do is we need to actually give it a reference and tell our Unity project that it's actually a Vuforia project. To do that, we need to go to the build settings and click the place settings down over here, and it will open up another setting panel in the inspector, and down over here in the XR setting we need to check this checkbox that called Vuforia Augmented Reality. So let's click on it. So you will notice that as soon as we have clicked on this, it has added another resources folder inside which we have a Vuforia configuration file. So this file is the main head of all the Vuforia apps. So we need to give our app license key over here. From Vuforia we have all the databases, we have other bunch of settings over here. So for now, let's go to our Vuforia account and get our license key. So let's go to developer.vuforia.com. Let's click login, and let me log in with my account. So we are in license manager. First of all, we need the app development app key. So I have plenty of them. I'll just start with any of them. Let's say AR project. Copy all of this from here and paste it over here. Next thing we need is a database with our target image. So to do that, let's go to our target manager. So the videos that I am going to play are related to small kids. So the target image that I have is this. So I have it in my desktop. Let's go and create a new database. I'm going to call it kids, and I'll leave the type to be device and create it. Now we have got it created. Let's go to the kids database and upload our target file. To do that, let's click add target and click the browse button, and here select this image file. Give the width whatever you want. I'm going to give it 1 and change the name to kids file or whatever. Click add. Let's wait for it to be uploaded. And yes, so you see that we have got a full 5-star rating, which means that it will be very easy to detect and it will be a very good augmentable object. Next thing we need to do is download our database from here and import in our Unity project. So let's click download databases and select a development platform, and here we will select Unity and click download. It will compile the database according to Unity settings and download. It got downloaded. Let's go back to our Unity and click import package and custom package. Go to the downloads folder and select the kids package. Click import. Now if we go back to our resources folder and Vuforia configuration, you will see that we have got the kids database name over here. So we have to select this checkbox and click activated, and we need to uncheck all the other databases because we don't want them to be in our app. Now we only have the kids database activated. Now go back to our scene and let's create a Vuforia target image like that. And from here we have already selected the type predefined, and let's select the database, which is kids, and our image is already selected. So as you know that it's going to be about video, and we already have these icons imported. So first of all, let's create the UI that we need to have for our video player. To do that, I am going to right click and go in our UI and have an image. Let's switch to the 2D view and double click the image to get in focus. So what I'm going to do is change the view from 1920 to 1610 landscape. Now I'm going to add all these buttons in these boxes, so it will be playing the video over here and we will have the buttons down over here. So first button that we will need is the pause or play button, and we will need to keep that in the very center. So let's do that, and we take it over here and we drag and drop the play button to it. And next thing we do is duplicate it over the same position and drag our pause button to it. So we have a play button and then we have a pause button over here. Something is wrong with my mouse. Let's select over here, and so yeah. So the reason why I've put it one above other is that whenever I click play, I hide the play button, and whenever I click pause, I hide the pause button. So next thing we need to do is add the volume and mute icon. So we can simply duplicate it by Control D and move it a bit right side and change the image. So we will do the same with volume button, and we need one volume and one mute icon. So next thing we are going to do is we need a next icon and a previous icon. So as I told you guys that we have 3 videos, so next icon will go to the next video and next and next and so on, and same for the previous icon, it will go to the previous video. So let's duplicate the image and move it a bit more further and change the icon to next icon, and do same with this and drag and drop it to a bit left side and change it to previous icon. So now we have all the buttons in place. Now we can do the rest of the task. So let's switch back to the 3D mode and go to our image target. Here we will need to add the video component. So we are going to render our video on a 3D object. So let's add the 3D object, and I am going to add a quad. So it will be a quad that is going to render our video. So first of all, we'll need to rotate the quad to 90 degrees so it will face the upward direction. Next, what we will need to do is move it a bit above the image target so it will be visible. There can be a lot of different ways to implement this, but I am going to use the simplest one right now, that I'm going to make this one quad play one video, and I'm going to replicate that for all of the other videos. So to do that, in the quad, let's add the video player component over here, and we need to add the audio source along with it as well. Now we need to import our video clips. So let's just import our video clips. So now I have all the 3 video clips imported. So let's go back to our quad, and here give the video clip our first video clip, and it will detect the track automatically. Now let's drag and drop the audio source to this audio source field, and you will notice that we have the play on awake available and wait for first frame and everything. So we'll need to make sure that the video plays on loop, so check that. But we need to play the video from our code, so we just uncheck this and uncheck this play on awake from the audio, so it does not play the audio before the video. So now we have done this. Let's go to our image target, and in our image target we need to edit this default trackable event handler script. So whenever this image gets tracked, it plays the video, the first video it has. And to have 3 different videos, we need to duplicate this quad 2 times and just change the video clip from here to other videos. So now let's go to our default trackable event handler script. So what I'm going to do is instead of playing the video directly from here, I am going to add another script that will hold all the functionality to play these videos and the functionality to handle all these buttons as well. So let's go to our AR camera and add a new component, let's say main manager, to it. So let's open this script, and first of all we will need to have the reference to all of these game objects. So let's have public game object video player 1, similarly public game object video player 2, public game object video player 3. As I told you earlier guys, there can be a lot of different ways to implement this, but I am going to keep it very simple so all of you guys can understand it, and those who are pro at programming can implement it their ways, whatever way you want to do it, and those who are a bit weak in programming can simply just copy paste my style. So we have the video player objects. Let's have the buttons. Public game object play button, public game object pause button, then we have public game object next button, public game object previous button, public game object mute button, public game object unmute button. So now I have created reference to all of the buttons. I am going to need a state bool variable, which I am going to call public bool is tracked equals to false. So it by default it will be false, and I am going to set it from our default trackable event handler, and whenever it gets the image target it will be set to true, and whenever it lost the image target it will be set to false. And inside this script I am going to make these video players available or unavailable based on this bool variable is tracked. We will also need some sort of way to know that which video player we are currently displaying, so we can easily do that with an integer variable called int player or int current player equals to 1. Now let's create the functions required to add the functionality for these buttons. So first of all we will have the public void play button functionality. Next we have public void pause, then we have public void mute, then we have public void unmute, then we have public void next, public void previous. As I write this code, I realized that it can be improved a bit. So we, instead of having these three different variables, we can have one array of game object and call it video player and delete the rest of two. Since we have this current player seek object, we can set it to 0 since we are going to deal with the arrays, and inside all these functions we can simply use this to reference the current video player we are going to talk about. So in the start, first of all, we will not need any of the video player to be active, so we are going to write a for each loop. Inside it we are going to reference our video player array, and we simply are going to make it set active false. It will just simply iterate over all the array and set all of them to false. Next, let's implement the play button. So to play our video, we have our video player array, and we need the reference to the current player. We call it like this, and we get the component by get component and passing it video player like this, and call the play. My IntelliSense is not working correctly. Let's just see what's wrong over here. You know what, guys, let's just save it and close it and open it up again. Maybe there is something wrong with the loading. So now I have rectified the problem with the Visual Studio. Now it works as it should be working before. So now it tells us that we need to give the reference of using Unity engine.video to use the video play class. So in this little piece of code, you will see that we are playing the current video player that we have, and let's just copy this and paste over here to use for the pause condition. To use for the pause function, we can use the same line of code for mute and unmute as well, but for mute we need to work with the audio source attached to this game object. So instead of video player, we write audio source, and we remove this play function call. We call the mute equals to true, and we copy this same line and paste it over here with false. So next thing we need to do is we need to move forward to the next video. So to do that, we simply need to add 1 to our current player, integer variable, and we need to call the play function, and same with the previous, we need to -1 from the current player and call the play function. So what's wrong with the current code is that we have by default all of them as set active to false. So whenever we are going to call this play function, it will return us an error, or it will not return us error. it will just not play it because the main game object will be not active in the hierarchy. So we need to think of something that we can use to set this required player active. We can create another function called void disable all. What it will do is it will disable all of the video players, and inside our play function we are going to set this current video player object to true, and whenever we pause it, we don't need to do anything when we pause it. So we have covered all the possible options. So next we need to implement that when the image target gets tracked, it tells this script to play the current video player. Next thing we need to do is call the play function from default trackable event handler whenever this image target gets tracked, and call the disable all function from this default trackable event handler script whenever the image target gets untracked or lost. And this leaves us with that we don't need this is tracked variable, so we can just simply delete it. And it also leaves us that we simply, instead of writing this, we call our disable all function over here. So first thing we need to do is we need to have the main manager reference inside our default trackable event handler. We can simply create the reference to our main manager game object like public game object, camera object, and inside our methods where we want to track it or untrack it, we can simply get the main manager component attached to this camera object and call the required public function play or disable all. To do that, we need to make this function public as well. So let's go back to our default trackable event handler, and inside here let's call the camera object dot get component and write main manager, and here let's call the play function. Copy this line and paste inside this function, and what it will do is whenever the image target gets lost, it comes to this function. So here we will call the disable all function. Let's just save it and save this as well. Let's go back to Unity, and you will notice that with our image target we now need to give a reference to a camera object. So let's just drag drop our AR camera to this, because we have the main manager script attached to AR camera. So next thing we need to do is we need to set this canvas active and disactive based on the condition that our image target has been detected or not. So we can do this by going to our main manager script, and we just simply need another reference to our canvas object over here. So if we disable this object, it hides all the button by default. So to do that, we create another public game object main canvas, and inside our play function we set the main canvas as true, and in the disable all function we set our main canvas to false. So next thing we need to do is go back to our Unity and select the AR camera and give references to our all these objects. First of all, let's give the reference of the main canvas. Then let's give the references of all these three video players. So to do that, we can just drag and drop these video player one by one to the video player array placer, and it will automatically increase the size. So next thing we need to do is rename these buttons accordingly. So this is the pause button, so let's call it pause button. This is the play button, let's call it play button. This is the mute button. This is the unmute button. The next is next button, and the next one is previous button. So now we have named our all the buttons. We can go back to our AR camera and easily give the references of all these buttons. So let's start with the pause button and give the reference of pause button to this script, then play button, then we have the mute button, then we have the unmute button, then the next button, then we have a previous button. So now we have given the references of all the buttons. We still need to write some code that, for example, the next or previous function still needs to have some kind of looping criteria, that whenever we reach the last video we start again from the first one, or if we reach the last video or the very first one, we start again from the last one. What else we need is we need to hide and unhide the play and pause buttons, and similarly the mute and unmute button whenever we call mute and unmute. So to do that, let's go back to our main manager script. To add the functionality of looping back to the first video whenever we have reached the last video, we simply add an if condition after adding 1 to the current player. So we check if our current player variable has surpassed the last index we have, which is 2. So if the current player has passed 2, which means we already have passed through the last video, so we set this current player back to 0 and rest remains the same, and same goes with the previous function. We check if our current player has gone below 0, we set this back to 2. So whenever we click the next button, we add 1 to it, we check if we had surpassed 2, which is our last video index, and we set it back to 0, so it kind of goes in round kind of situation, same in the previous button case. Next, what we need to do is we need to set active and disactive all or the play and pause buttons. So to set active and disactive our play and pause button, we can simply go and whenever we click play, we need to hide the play button and unhide the pause button. So we write play button dot set active false and pause button dot set active true. We do the same with the pause button. So when we click pause, we need to hide the pause button and unhide the play button. So we call pause button dot set active false and play button dot set active true. Similarly with the mute and unmute functionality. So whenever we click mute, we need to hide the mute button and unhide the unmute button, and whenever we click unmute, we need to hide the unmute button and hide the unmute button and unhide the mute button. So let's write mute button dot set active false, unmute button dot set active true. Let's just copy and paste it and change the true to false and false to true. So I think that's all we need to do right now. Let's save it and yeah, let's go back to Unity and let's see if everything is right. Let's just save this scene and call it main. Now go to the build setting, add the scene into your build, click play setting, go to the other settings, change the package name, let's say com.mediamart.ar video player. Next we need to uncheck this Android TV compatibility option, and rest of it seems perfect for me to test. So let's just build this and save it in desktop and call it main app.apk. One thing we need to do is that we need to assign the button functions to all these images. So let's select all of them and add the button component to them, and we need to add the click, and we are going to use the same object for all of them. So let's just drag the air camera, and now let's just assign one by one. So to the pause button we need to assign the pause function, to the play button we need to assign the play function. Same goes for the mute button, we give mute but mute function reference. For unmute we give the unmute, where is unmute, here is it. Now we need to give the next reference, and now we need to give the previous, previous. So let's just save it and build it, build setting, build, and main.apk, save. So this is how it comes out to be, guys. You can see the next and previous buttons are working perfectly and changing the videos. The next button on the third video takes us to the first one, and similarly the first one goes to the third one on back press. Thanks for watching my video. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to cover something. Don't forget to subscribe. If you want to support me, find the Patreon link in the description below and become a patron.